This is the introduction to section 2.6 part 2. We're going to be talking about the proofs on the last page here of your section 2.6 notes. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to go through one of these and kind of explain the process with how to figure out your reasons. And you'll notice you already have the statements down. So if you really wanted to, you would not watch the video to start. Try and write the reasons, write the statements down, and try and figure out the reasons on your own, and then come back and check and see if you've got it right. Okay, that'd be the best way to do this. But I'm going to go through one of these, and then I'm going to have you go through the other one and see if you can figure out the reasons, and then we're going to discuss that. So let's take a look at proof using the vertical angles theorem first. Okay, so let's take a look at this one, and we have up here up top that given that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4, and we also need to prove that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. So you notice we've got the first statement here. First statement, angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. Well, that's a pretty easy one. That's going to be our given. Okay. So now as you look at, make sure you have your tool belt out, because as you look at your tool belt and you're looking at these, we got to figure out what are legit reasons as to why we can say these steps. So step 2 says angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Okay, and as you look at angle 1 and angle 3 in the picture, here's angle 1, here's angle 3, you'll notice that those two are congruent, and we got to figure out why they're congruent. Well, they're congruent because these are vertical angles. So we can say that they're congruent by the vertical angles theorem. Vertical angles theorem. We know that if they're vertical, they're congruent to each other. Okay? So step 3. Step 3, it says that angle 2 and angle 4 are congruent. Well, if I outline those angles out here in red, these are 2 and 4. Okay, you'll notice that 2 and 4 are also vertical angles, and we know because of the vertical angles theorem that they're congruent to each other. So my reason here is, again, the vertical angles theorem. Now, is it possible that you could have two of the same reasons back to back? Absolutely. Okay, you're going to see that could happen a couple times as you're going through. Okay, now that we've got the first 3 steps figured out, we want to look at this 4th step. Step number 4 says that angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. Okay, and if you look at your previous statements here, all right, if you look at your previous statements, you'll notice that as you look at these, we've got 2 things, and I'm going to circle these to notice. You'll notice that we have angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 in a step before, and we have angle 2 is congruent to angle 4 in the step before. Okay, so if angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 and angle 2 is congruent to angle 4, they're both congruent to the same things, then they're congruent to each other. This is a case of the transitive property. Okay, the transitive property. Again, this is, in this case, this would be like A is congruent to B, B is congruent to C, therefore A is congruent to C. It's the same type of concept. 1's congruent to 4, 2's congruent to 4. If they're both congruent to 4, then they're both congruent to each other. Okay? Alright, so last step is angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. Okay, so now again I'm going to look here at what my statements are above. Here I've got angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and here angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Well, if they're both congruent to angle 1, then they're both congruent to each other. This is another case of the transitive property. Three things that are congruent to each other: angle 1, angle 2, and angle 3. In the red ones, it was angle 1, angle 2, and angle 4. Okay? So, and we've now proven that angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent, in this case by the transitive property. Okay, in this proof. Alright, now, as you look at the second proof, I've filled in the second proof for you. Okay, in terms of the statements. And what I want you to do is I want you to see if you can come up with the reasons before you come to class tomorrow. And this will be one of the first things that we discuss. Okay, so you have your WSQ to fill out. I'll send that to you. Make sure you complete that, and then also complete this second proof, and we'll see what you get and see what kind of questions you can have on it. Okay, this concludes section 2.6, part 2. Again, don't forget to complete your WSQ.